Hello, and welcome to Listen to Daddy. Thank you for joining us. I'm Daddy Rod.
And I'm Daddy Rob.
Again, thank you for joining us for our second podcast where we talk about, and I'm not Megan Thee Stallion, but we talk about body, yaddy, 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 yaddy. And on a more serious note, I think, well, first of all, I don't know if there is a certain photo of yours truly that Daddy Rob you want to pull up. And there we go. So I think you'll be able to see, there we go. So Rob and I have had many conversations about body, working out, as we've grown older and also being title holders. So I wanted to kind of start off, and we were talking about this, and I wanted to kind of start off talking about this photo. Ironically, this was a photo that was taken of me working out naked in Rob and his husband's basement when they lived in Philadelphia. And at the time they didn't know I was working out naked. But I was just like, you know what? Let me feel free. Let me do what I do. And as I'm working out, what you see is actually me capturing a moment of me looking at myself with a sense of amazement, wonderment, disbelief, like, oh my God, who the fuck is that? And realizing that was me. That at the time, I believe I was 52, 52 turning 53. I was like, I look good. Wow. And I think that was the first time in my life I had ever really loved and embraced physically what I looked like. I thought I had come closer to the pictures, and you'll notice if you look real carefully toward the left of that photo, I felt I was finally looking like the pictures that I had seen. And I just remember just feeling this sense of wow, this sense of awe. What I didn't know, and let me also preface by saying that looking at that picture, first of all, the fact that I could look like that in my 50s, because once upon a time, you could not have told me that. And so I was just on a high when I saw that picture. You couldn't have told me that a few months later, because I also need to say that this was happening during COVID. So there was a lot of us who were working from home. And while that was challenging for a lot of people, it was great for me because I could work out from home. I could do other things that really nourished my body, like cooking, and nourished my spirit, like gardening. So basically, I was really having that work balance life that people talk about so much. That part of it is I could take care of my body. What I didn't know was that a few months later, when COVID was starting to become less of a thing, that I was called back into the office. And I did not realize at the time that that would send me into a really deep depression because I did not like commuting, going back into the office after I had enjoyed so much time with myself at home, working from home and doing other things. And that body that you see there, I quickly lost. So for me, it was like looking back at that photo and realizing that I'm getting closer back to that now, 2 years later, now that I'm back in the gym, it really started me thinking, you know, just about taking care of my body, how I felt about myself, how I felt about looking this good in my 50s. Like I said, because I did not think I could do it, and how I felt about myself as a whole then versus the time that I didn't quite fit that and how I felt bad about myself. So, and I know, Rob, we've had different conversations like this because, both of us being title holders, and even at our ages that we were title holders. My first title, I was in my 40s. My second title, I was in my 50s. And there's always that pressure to have the nice body, which you definitely did. Too bad can we pull up one of your pics? And if not, I understand. But yeah, you were giving body. And just for anyone who's listening, if you go to my Facebook page and you go to, I think it was last week that I made the first post about, or one of our posts about body, 3 weeks ago. And you'll see our pictures side by side. You'll see me standing up against a brick wall, because that's what other people do, against brick walls.
I'm being informed by our technical person what you're saying, but it just faded out. So I think we're good now.
We're good now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Technology! And so the other, right. So the other part of that is if you see next to that, you'll see Daddy Rob standing in a doorway looking oh so scrumptious because that's what leather men do, right? Especially during their title years. But yeah, so Rob, thanks for letting me start off with that pick. And I see, and I think you have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, in fact, I want to go back for a moment to the picture that you shared. So I'm going to ask our control room guy to pull up that picture again. Now, if you look at the left side of that picture, that picture you're referencing, that's on the mirror that you're looking at. All right, Titan, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my picture. This is that picture. And the reason I wanted to share this, and if you want to see pictures of me, at the end of this video, you can watch the beginning of the video again, and that will show you a few of the pictures from my title year when my body was snatched, as they say. But the picture here is from Daddy Rod and I both attended the Human Sexuality program, master's program at Widener University. And one of the classes I was in, there was a picture to do a collage of images you found sexy. And being the only cis gay male in the room, this was what I brought into the room. And the majority of the other students were cis females who brought in pictures of men and women, and they would talk about these pictures and why they found these people sexy or attractive, and whether it was a soft lip or they felt that they would be sensual to touch or whatever. But somebody commented on my picture and said it was pornographic. And I think it's because they saw me objectifying all of these daddy types. And after they got done commenting on my picture, I said, well, unlike the rest of you who were picking pictures of people that you found objectively sexy as in or attractive that you would want to have something to do with them, I picked images that I aspire to. When I think of sexy bodies, I think of what kind of bodies and embody an image that I want to project, and it gives me something to motivate myself towards. And a lot of people do that with pictures of themselves. They do, like Daddy Rod, the picture you showed, shows like a point in your history of your body that you can reference at some other point and compare against. But the question I would ask, based on this picture that I'm sharing, is when we talk about what we find as attractive and sexy bodies, you had said that we're going to make this daddy bod summer, or I think that was the statement. I want to bring it back up because I'm done looking at that picture. But I think that there's something to be said about projecting masculinity through your body, and that's what I find sexy. It's something in myself. Because when we talk about what we find sexy in other people, or what we're attracted to, what is it why are we attracted to that? Is it solely visual? Is there something about a body type that we want to be all touchy on, that we want to have hold us? When we think of our, particularly our erotic attraction to body types, what is it that we want to do with that particular body, that particular body shape is appealing to us? But those bodies that I was showing are what happens, it speaks to my ability to mold my body, to be the master of my domain, so to speak, that I can make these changes in myself and feel proud of that. But I found in my past, particularly my title year, when I was at what objectively would be my best body for my age, I didn't feel any different about myself. I didn't feel more attractive. I didn't feel more of anything. I just felt different. And my body became a tool towards me trying to win a competition, as opposed to me really appreciating what that looked like. And my understanding is most people have some sort of body dysmorphia where they see pictures of themselves and they could be looking hot and everybody could tell them they look hot. Like Damon Jacobs said that you had a hot body in the chat comments from that picture. But we don't always see what other people see. So what do we want for ourselves and what do we want from other people?
And it's funny that you bring up Damon because, and for those of you who don't know, in addition to being a therapist extraordinaire like Daddy Rob, as well as being a prep advocate extraordinaire. He's also my babe. He's my, what do the kids say? He's bae. So that's my beloved. And we had this conversation, I think it was last week leading up to this, and just thinking about what really informs, our desire, particularly as gay men, to have a certain body type. And I'm gonna make it personal for me. And I may have some body dysmorphia, more on that in a few minutes. But I remember being in New York when I was much younger, in my 30s. Um, no, actually, yeah, I was in New York. I was in my 20s, excuse me. And I remember seeing all these images of men who had HIV. And at the same time, I remember how, at first, the only images that we saw were basically of the men who were dying in the hospital, gaunt, skinny, former shells of who they were. But I also noticed around this time that the men who had HIV, who still had nice bodies, who were bodybuilders, were really celebrated. And I think for me, and especially ironically, decades later, now that HIV is living with me, um, I think at that time it made an impression about beating the odds that yes, you could have this virus and still be sexy, still be desirable, still be healthy. And I think in my mind, I did equate um, being healthy, having HIV, and having a tight muscular, like thick muscular or lean muscular body as being the epitome of not just health, but also of masculinity and desirability. And I think once I got HIV, once it came to live with me again, and that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, once I contracted HIV, it really became important for me to keep the body that I had, to that it had to be, because I still wanted to be desirable even with this virus living with me. Add to that aging. Growing up, a lot of the elders that I knew, they were wonderful people, but a lot of times you would hear them talk about the aches of this and the pains of that, and having to take meds for this and that and every other thing, and dealing with this illness and that illness, and it showed on their bodies. And there was just something in me that was like, but I don't want to be like that. Excuse me. Now, one of the things I will say growing up and coming out, particularly in major metropolitan areas, is seeing men who were older who seemed to be defying the odds around what we thought of as aging in terms of, no, I look good, I dress well, I smell good, I still can attract the boys and the men and the other daddies, as we would call them now. And I said, I want to defy the odds. I don't want to be broken down. I still don't want to be broken down. So I think for me, and I didn't even realize until I think Damon and I had this convo and you and I had this convo, how important aging and HIV has been around my desire to have that body. And Damon tells me all the time I'm smoking high. And most of the time, I don't believe him. And I know that's my own stuff. But body dysmorphia is real.
Yes, and we talked about tidal years. That really came to the fore for me. I had struggled with body dysmorphia during that period, in that I kept thinking that my body needed to look better than it did, like I said, objectively, it was the best body I could have hoped for at that time. It's just what a lot of people, when they are molding their bodies, when they are exercising or dieting, they say to themselves, "I want to look good," but there's never any definition of what that good look is. I want to remind everybody that you can chat through the YouTube page if you have any questions or comments on things. We'll try to grab those as we can. Uh, I shoot, there was something that distracted me from something else I wanted to talk about. You were talking about your relationship with your body. I think my relationship with my body was complicated. I've mentioned this before. I'm a survivor of sexual assault, and as part of the repercussions of that, I struggle with a connection to my body because my body has been used against me. So there's been a lot of the process I've done and work psychologically to kind of reconnect to the body where it doesn't feel like a stranger or something that could betray me at any moment. So, but as a somebody who's coming into my daddiness, I recognize that the only way that goes away is if I do something about it. So it's beyond just working out at a gym. It's also just kind of learning the sensuality of my body, about reconnecting and saying that touch is good, body types are good, and that I can look good and not worry about somebody taking advantage of it. Uh, did you have a? Am I answering a question here? I think
No,
I've kind of
there
gotten
wasn't a
distracted by something.
question, but no, but I appreciate what you said, because I know one of the things we did want to talk about, and we have started, that is our relationship with our bodies. And when you spoke about betrayal, and again, one of the things around Listen to Daddy that I really like about this podcast is that it gives us a space to talk about issues as men who are older, as men who are over 50. And, you know, that sense of betrayal, first with, not so much with contracting HIV, but definitely with having the heart attack, which I had at age 52, followed by blood clots, followed by and some of the normal stuff like indigestion, the things that I would be able to eat with no problem. Now all of a sudden it's a problem. And let's get really frank and talk about sex, particularly. Um, Let me see. I think the FCC still rules here. So let's just talk about erections, recognizing that yes, sildenafil, Viagra, Cialis, all of those things did become more of a reality for me. That without those, I've noticed that differences in my erections in terms of frequency, the ability on its own, to still. I mean, it's still there. Trust and believe. But in terms of when I'm having sex, do I want to make sure that I can go from beginning to end? And I realized that yes, I did need, um, some medication to help with that, and just sort of feeling, you know, and I think that's what also fuels my desire to defy the odds, because at times I've had, and I posted on Facebook about this for anyone who wants to read it more in depth, about that love hate relationship. Yes, loving my body when I loved what I saw, um, in the mirror, but also hating the fact that all of these things are happening now to my body as a result of aging and growing older, and not feeling always as comfortable in my skin as I have always, not always, but I had been more so when I was younger. Um, and that is something I know for myself that I'm working on, because I don't like the idea of hating my body. I like the idea, what you said, Rob, about being able to do something about it. So I think what I'm trying to do is shift into, I'm in partnership with my body. As you know, I'm back in the gym. Um, Shout out to my buddy Sanchez, who I think you know as well, who does personal training, and said, let's be realistic about what you can do. You're not in your 30s. You're not even in your early 40s. When he would work with me during my first title year, and he helped get me in shape. And he was like, you're not the same person then. You've got to approach this differently. And at first, that was kind of like, ouch. But then I was like, but you know what? He's right. So yeah, trying to like really be in partnership, trying to listen more to my body instead of fighting things. It was even something. Oh, a special shout out to my baby, because at one point I was thinking about dying this, because first of all, being honest, Damon is also in his 50s and he looks amazing and he looks very youthful. And sometimes I'm like, who is this old man he's standing next to? Oh, that's me. So at one point I was toying with the idea of dyeing the grays, and he gave me this look. He gave me this look like, don't you even think it. Then he kind of softens, like, well, I guess it's your body. You can do what you like. I said, I either dye the beard or I shave the body hair. He was like, don't you dare. I wouldn't do the latter anyway. I will say I love my body hair, but I think it's a work in progress
Well,
in terms of my relationship.
well, yeah, that's part of the conundrum as we get older, is like how much do we allow ourselves to grow old gracefully, and how much do we try to retain a youthful appearance? You were talking about sex, and I mean, it is a real thing that our idea of what we find sexy is based on this whole heteronormative procreation model, because we visually, in the past, looked for people who looked healthy by the standards of the day and had some enough affluence in whatever was necessary to make sure that any children we had were provided for and had the best opportunity to grow up to be strong and affluent adults. But as gay men, we don't have that many. I'm not going to say all gay men. There are a lot of gay men who decide to have children. But for the most part, if you're a gay cis male hooking up with another gay cis male, you're not looking for somebody who's going to give you good babies. You're looking for somebody who's going to give you a good time. And one of the things I've appreciated about the gay male culture is our ability to fetishize almost any body type. You can focus on any particular thing you want: height, weight, age, any of that stuff, because it's more about what we want to interact with and what we want to have, what we want to produce from it. It's like, what is going to be most enjoyable for me? And some people, it is a larger person. And for some people, it's a more muscular person. Some people are turned off by people with very low body fat because there's nothing to hold on to. So it goes back to when we're talking about what we find sexy in a body, what is it? And again, is for a lot of men, they will fetishize that thing about themselves that they like least. I went through a period when I was younger. I hated my feet, absolutely hated my feet, and was so turned on by other guys' feet because of that. They had something that I didn't, and I wanted to be close to that. And those things that I've wanted have changed throughout the course of my life. But I'm liking the fact that I feel that I am given permission as a gay man to kind of pursue anything I want to fetishize in another man, as long as we're both open to that.
Right. And actually, so last night I was talking with my best friend D about this podcast, and one of the things that came up in our conversation was the whole dad bod phenomenon. I don't know if it's so much a thing now, but I remember a few years ago, all of a sudden, thicker older men with a belly or a belly was being celebrated. And just your thoughts. How helpful really was or is that? It is the dad bod now that we're talking about it. Is it really just another fetishization, or do you really think it kind of indicates maybe we're going in a different direction around what we find sexy in an older man?
Yeah, I think that's a complicated one, because primarily the first people really talking about it were the heteronormative cis females, talking about the their husbands or boyfriends or whatever that they wanted to have a sustained relationship with, because there is that phenomenon when you settle into a relationship that you are supposed to be able to not be as concerned about being the hottest thing around, because you have somebody in your life, and that you can relax a little. You still have that muscle from when you were single, but there's like a layer of fat on the top of it because you're being fed better, or you've got other things to focus on. And to a certain degree, that's good, because that comfort in a relationship says, I love you no matter how much you change, and that's a beautiful thing. But the more we allow for not caring about appearance, the more complaints we start to get as we even get older of how much further you've let yourself go. So there's like this happy period of, I can be a little relaxed but not too relaxed. And again, if your partner is hyper focused on what you look like, that's a problem. But if but there is still that piece of, you want to have physical intimacy with your partner, you want to have physical intimacy with other people, and part of that is the eyes. You have to be visually compelling to somebody to start that conversation. There's that outward trigger, which triggers something inside, and then that whole thing leads into sex. So uh, dad bod, I think, is good, that it takes some pressure off, but to not take it too far into, I don't have to care anymore.
I think I have mixed feelings with the dad bod situation. Also, I think for me, you know, I was glad to see, okay, there's more than one type of body, and I think even at a time when I was rocking the dad bod myself, I was also like, it was like, but I don't think this is really who I am. And again, something you and I talked about, Rob, is the whole idea of, if that whole thing is, what is a healthy body weight and shape versus a certain goal that may not be realistic? Because on the one hand, I know I feel really good about myself when, okay, when I'm hitting like around 165 to 172 in terms of my weight, when the arms and the chest are defined, the ass is assing, the thighs, the legs look good. um, and I sometimes wonder, I feel good at that weight. Does that mean though, but is that healthy for me? Because for a long time I was more on the heavy side, in the 180s, pushing 190. But ironically, that's when I had my heart attack. And that's when I started questioning, is this really my body type? Is this really what I'm meant to carry? Um, and again, that whole thing around how I felt when I was leaner, but with that feeling good was also the sense of, okay, now I got to maintain this. And that's the hard part. And it's not as easy for me in my 50s. I can do it. And again, that picture, the black and white picture, shows that I can do it. But for me, it also takes a lot more work than it did in my 20s, 30s, even early 40s.
Yeah, that is a huge disappointment. When you get to that perfect body, you're not done because you
Hmm.
still have to keep doing stuff to maintain it. And the year that 2015 is when I was Mr. Iowa Leather and competing in an international Mr. Leather. I was working with a nutritionist to to drop weight because I was over 200. It got me down to 187, and that was the lowest I'd been in some time. And then after I was done competing, I kind of focused on academia. Went to finish my undergraduate and then went to grad school, and I was less focused on my body and started putting weight back on. So I got up to like 218 maybe. Uh, and then when we were deciding to move back to Palm Springs, I knew there were going to be a lot of gay men out here, a lot of pressure to look a certain way. So I started to lose weight, but then I dropped into a depression. There are a lot of things going on in my life, and my weight fell to 183. And it wasn't because I was trying to lose weight. It was because the depression was keeping me from eating as much as I would normally do. And I was getting compliments on how trim I was looking. And I had a hard time with that because it wasn't coming from a place of me wanting that, but objectively, people looking at me thought I looked more attractive. And I was feeling probably the worst I'd felt about myself in some time. So the incongruity between what I was presenting and what I was feeling on the inside, that's a real thing. And it can be, it's one of those cases where if you don't have control over your body, uh, it, it can feel, it's a scary place to be, and I'm feeling better about myself trying to put weight back on, but I do recognize I don't want to put too much weight back on because I'm liking the compliments.
Right. And and that's really, and the whole thing you and I both talked about, depression and its impact on our body, and that whole thing around mental health. I know that's a future podcast, so stay tuned, folks. But in the meantime, we've been talking about the challenges around our relationship with our bodies and how that's impacted us. There's a part of me that's like, but what, as you've gotten older, and I've had to think about this for myself, what is it about getting older, uh, and the changes that's come with our bodies that you actually like? I have some thoughts, but I kind of want to pick your brain around that as well.
I like that I am actually I'm more comfortable with my body than I have been in some time. It's because I've been in it longer, and the older I've gotten, we talked about the response of other people. The less I care about the response of other people. It's more about what my personal relationship is with my body, and not letting somebody else make me feel bad. I mean, when I was younger, I was the shortest, scrawniest kid in the class, like grade school, And to a certain
Hmm.
degree, that's the image that stuck with me through my life. When I try to visualize myself, I visualize this weak person, and it's that. And I, anytime anybody complimented me, I kind of dismissed it because I, in my head, knew what I looked like, and it wasn't this person that they were describing. But as I've gotten older, I've recognized I'm not somebody who lies to somebody. I'm not somebody who goes up to somebody and
Hmm.
says something to them that isn't true because I think it's going to make them feel better. If I say something, it's true. So why would I discount what anybody else is saying to me? Why would I give them an ulterior motive when I wouldn't give that to myself? So now when I get compliments, I try to integrate that. I go, I'm glad you see that. I'm glad somebody sees that, and I try to put that in my mental Rolodex as part of my image of myself, because I recognize as I've gotten older that I'm not always the best judge of myself, and to give myself a little more grace by accepting the gift of compliments. And it's not necessarily that my body has gotten better, but my perception of it has shifted from being that it's a body that nobody wants, that it's a body that quite a few people want. Whether or not they get it is another story. But it's the, and I'm also recognizing that as I get older, that there's a group of people who are attracted to that. Seeing maturity. That people are attracted to that maturity. That's exemplified by my body. I have an older looking body, but that attracts people who want people who aren't kids anymore.
Interesting, because one of the things, I was on Twitter last night. Yeah, let's talk about sex for a minute. Because I was on Twitter last night. I'm on Twitter quite a bit, particularly as D and I call it, dirty Twitter. Um, and what I've noticed is that some of the profiles that'll feature porn clips, a lot of the ones I was running into were featuring younger men. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, like, come on, young kings, get it in. And I was appreciating that. And some were actually pretty hot. But I also noticed, I was like, even as I was looking at the porn, I was also like, you know what? You could tell these are babies, just in terms of their build, just in terms of, and I was like, well, where are the older men getting it in? One of my favorite clips is of this hot dude getting railed. And he has a nice trim body, but by the hairiness and by the size and everything, you can tell it's an older body. He's got the salt pepper beard like I do, and he was having the time of his life. In fact, in my circles, that video was making the rounds over the past few weeks, and I was like, where are there more older, good-looking men putting themselves out there like that on Twitter, on dirty Twitter? I need that. I want that, because and I realized, because they look like me. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I really do like it. On the one hand, we think it's shallow to kind of have people give us compliments, but I'm gonna tell you something. It is an ego boost, to be, and I'm gonna tell on myself, to be at a club, at a party, be it social or even a sex party, and people complimenting, looking at me and going, wow, nice. Yeah, I'm gonna get with that. What's your name is? So what your name is? Even yesterday, I had fun times with a friend, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, you lost weight. You looking like a snack." And okay, speak about the body trying to betray you. That's called a sneeze that doesn't know whether it wants to sneeze or not. The body, I tell you, it's something
Well,
very interesting.
while you're trying to figure that out, I will say that it's I because of my history was I do immediately go when somebody compliments me.
Uh,
My body, the very first thing I think of is, what do you want from me? Because it's the,
ooh,
yeah, what's your agenda? Because that's always because people respond well to compliments about their body, and people know that, so it's like an entry point. And so sometimes I do struggle with is this just a sincere compliment, or is this somebody who's trying to get something from me? And that's just where my head goes. And it's something that I'm working on. I want to be more gracious than that. Because even if their ulterior motive is, I would like to get this guy in bed, I can still say no. But it's
right.
the acknowledgement that, and I think people need to understand that there are a lot of people who are uncomfortable when you talk about their body. for whatever reason. If there's a lot of discussion around whether or not you should tell somebody, "Oh, you look like you lost lot of weight. You're looking good," because what are you telling them about how they looked
Yeah.
before? So I mean, there is some potential landmines when it comes to complimenting other people. So be careful about that. But it isn't always received in the way that you intend it to.
I'm going to go back to something. The whole thing around somebody wanting something, particularly when it comes to our bodies. Um, I may get some pushback from this, from you and from others who are watching this. Is that always a bad thing when it comes to people complimenting us? And I'll tell you why. Because if someone is sexually attracted to me because they like the way I look, again, like you said, well, I can say yes, I can say no. And I think, given my own history with being molested, that's important to me. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, so you like what you see, fine. Um, if someone gives me a compliment because even if they just want to see me smile, I'm like, I'm here for that too. Because I think about when I give somebody compliments, do I want something? Sure, I want to feel good about giving them that compliment. Maybe I might be interested in them, be it for sex or what have you. Is that always a bad thing? Somebody wanting something based on the way we look, especially, and let's be honest, whether for titles, whether for our health, even for our egos. There's a lot of work that goes into maintaining our health. And I'll say for me, someone giving me a compliment, I'm just like, you know what? That's just the extra push I need to go back to the gym the next day. It's like something is working. And I sometimes wonder if in our pushing up against being objectified or, not wanting to be too attached to the physical, which is a whole something else I want to explore maybe in a few minutes. Do we also miss the blessing? And I'm just putting it out there. Maybe your thoughts. I don't know what you think about that as
I
well.
think it just speaks to we have complicated relationships with our bodies, and
Okay.
we're all on our own journey to acceptance of our body and our acceptance of others sharing space with our body, or people desiring to share space with our body. People with a lower self-esteem may be more challenged by somebody complimenting them than somebody with a higher self-esteem, and that has nothing to do with the person who's giving the compliment. It has to do with the person who's receiving it. And I think we just need to ask ourselves, when we are complimenting somebody else, why we're doing it and what we hope that other person will get from that. And that it's okay to think about what my agenda is. I like if I was to compliment you because I found you attractive enough that I wanted to sleep with you, that's my agenda, and that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
the way I'm saying it, the word, what's your game? A lot of people have a line because they've tried it and it works and it hasn't offended anybody so far, so they stick with that. If you're one of those people who's like, I'm just going to say whatever comes out of my mouth and hope it's received well, you might want to rethink that approach to complimenting people, because
Okay.
there is you're starting a relationship with somebody and you want to start it on a good foot. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's never easy to approach somebody and try to break the ice. Uh, and if you're going to do it with a compliment about their physical appearance, make sure you're not saying it no longer looks like you're pregnant, because nobody wants to hear that.
Right. So it's funny you should say that because, and I want everyone who watches this to know, at least for me, please feel free to give me compliments about my body, any part of my body. A compliment's very welcome, especially you, Damon. But I also want to add one of the things is please don't follow it up with you look good for your age.
Ugh.
Please don't do that. Don't do that. Because, first of all, oh, and there's something else also. When I tell you how old I am, please don't say, "Oh, you're just a baby," even if you are significantly older than me. And I think both of those things, for your age and "Oh, you're just a baby," get under my skin because, and again, especially as a man of color, as someone who contracted HIV, I often say to folks, there are a lot of the kids who didn't make it to the age that I am. So for me, pour moi, I just like, can we just appreciate the fact, first and foremost, that A, I made it to this age, and B, that I do look however good I do look, and that took a lot of work to get here. Because and even when I catch myself when I'm interacting with younger men, I've even had to catch myself or apologize if I've said, "Oh, you're just a baby." There's something very dismissive, very backhanded, insulting about dismissing someone as a baby or saying you look good for your age. Well, how am I supposed to look? If I'm 55, turning 56 next month, I might add. If I look good for my age, what are you saying about how I'm supposed to look? And maybe that's why, because I've heard that a lot, especially after I hit my 40s. Forget 50s. When I hit my 40s, I would start hearing that. And I was like, how am I supposed to look? And I think that's where that whole defying of the age thing kind of set fire in me, because it was like, if I look good, I want to look good regardless of what age I am.
Oh, what about
I don't know about you, Rob.
what about you don't look whatever the age, like you, yeah, what the hell, yeah, like you're saying, what is that age supposed to look like? Okay, I'll admit it, I just turned 54 last month. I don't know what, 54 is supposed to look like. I know, even based on my parents' generation, when I think of people I knew then who were in their 50s, they were primarily, the men anyway, were primarily heterosexual cis males who had a particular way that they thought about their body. Even now when you look around, straight men are more likely to be in baggier clothing that hides their body, where gay men are more
Right.
comfortable showing their body because there's something uh, uh, that's overtly sexual that gay men have somehow adopted. It's like I want to look, I want to show you who I am physically at all times, and
Mm.
I want to see if you respond to that. And straight men are somehow not there. They, for some reason, if they focus too much on their body, I think it appears feminine because women are stereotyped as being overly concerned about how they look, spending way too much time in front of a mirror, too much time getting ready. So the anti-feminine is just to not care, put on something baggy, mussed up hair, walk out the door. As a gay man, I can't do that. I cannot be in public and not look my best because you never know who you're going to run into, and who's going to judge you, and who's going to be talking about you at the next cocktail party. That's a stereotype as well, and I get it. But there's some part in my brain that says when I walk out the door, I have got to look snatched because that's my responsibility as a gay man.
And it's very interesting. And we haven't even touched on how homophobia, or maybe we did. I want to go back there. How homophobia has impacted how straight men don't take care of their bodies. I'm thinking about the whole metrosexual craze of the 90s. I think it was the
I think
90s or
so.
the early 90s, early 2000s. And I just remember the first of all, why is it sexual in any way, shape, or form for a man, any man, regardless of his sexual identity, to want to look the best that he can, to look stylish, to take care of his body? Why is that sexual in terms of identity in any way, shape, or form? And then I realized what it really was speaking to was still people saying, even if you're a straight man, it's pretty gay for you to want to look good and take care of yourself. Period. Uh, Also, last week, and this stayed with me too, about someone actually posting that, oh, I literally don't wash my butt in the shower because that's gay. And I was like, you know, women don't like stink asses either. And I'm saying to myself, as men, are we really so hung up on our relationship with our bodies that to care for our genitals, our asses, how we look, how we dress, which is all part of self-care, which is all part of our relationship with our bodies, that ironically, why does that have to be gay?
Yeah, we can have a
Why
whole
does it
episode
have
about
to
straight
be
guys and their
less?
rules about what it is to be straight as opposed to what it is to be gay, because they got a whole bunch of rules about that. And I don't want to be the one washing their underwear, by the way, if that's the approach that they're taking to life.
But how many of us as gay men in being, and if we think of ourselves as masculine in any way, shape, or form, still carry those are not just straight men rules. I think those are male rules, including how we care or don't care for our bodies.
Well, we all got
So
the same
how
early
many of us
training.
as gay I mean, how many of us as gay men, may actually internalize a lot of that as well.
Yep. Yeah, we're not immune to that as young boys getting that same messaging. We got the same
Mhm.
foundational messaging. Is what we chose to do with it. I want to read a couple of comments. Damon wrote,
Mhm.
"Compliments don't make me feel good. They add to the good feelings I'm already giving myself. It is ultimately my responsibility to feel good about myself." I, I like that. Uh, Brian Kreisinger Denk said, "Our society celebrates youth, and many men respond to being called daddy as an age related insult. How did both learn to embrace daddy as attractive, given it implies age?" It's a great question, and I want to circle back to something you talked about before about porn. If anybody's paying
Yeah.
attention who has anything to do with the porn industry, enough twinks. I need to see more mature men, and I will cop to the fact that I still watch porn. I've been married now for 13 years, something like that, and I still enjoy porn as a motivator to still think of myself sexually, to keep myself in that mode. And I recently got into VR porn, and that 3D porn when you put on the,
Right.
the VR, and there's virtually nothing that features people my age. And I get that there's a fetishization of youth, and I get our society is all big on the innocent young people, and that this whole world is about the next generation. As long as I'm here, it's all about me, honey. I've still got a pulse. I've still got breath. I still have a purpose. I still have vitality. I have not. Daddy is very much an age-related thing, but uh, as I've said, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more confident in my body and in my sexuality. So I'm more comfortable doing things I was not comfortable doing as a child. Not a child, as a young man when I was first starting to have sex, it was all very vanilla. But as I've gotten older, vanilla's gotten like, yeah, that's nice, but what else is there in this world? How can I expand my experience? And part of being a daddy is saying, I need to engage more parts of my body in this pursuit. It isn't all about the orgasm. It's about the sensuality. It's about the journey. It's about what you share and explore, either with yourself or with somebody else. But the again, yes, our society celebrates youth. All the entertainment stuff you're going to see is going to be the majority of it is going to be representing them. But I find somebody my age more sexy, my age or older, more sexy than somebody younger. Because when I see somebody younger, I just think this is exhausting. I remember how exhausting it was to be young and try to please everybody else, and you don't bring something to
Mhm.
the table of your own. You're still learning from other people. So now I get to teach other people and say that this body, that being a daddy, all this is sexy, and I own it. And people like you, people like Damon, people like my husband, people who constantly reinforce. Now living in Palm Springs, where the median age I think is around 60, and the majority of the population is gay. I'm seeing older men, older than me, who are still looking fine. And what that is motivation to keep uh, reinforcing myself as a vibrant sexual human being. And that's part of how I define being a daddy, is being comfortable enough in my sexuality where I don't apologize for it anymore. I just soak up all the good feelings.
And it's interesting. Well, first of all, thanks to Damon and Brian for their comments. I have a feeling Damon and I are going to talk a little bit more about the whole compliments thing because while I agree with him that happiness is our own, no one's job is to make us feel better. I also see compliments, particularly sincere compliments, as God's gift through someone else to add to the happiness that we already have. So, and I'm a strong believer in that. And I also like Brian's question because you and I talked a lot in length about daddies last month. So, Brian, thank you for that question because that's a prompt for me that you can, I believe that if you have the link to this live broadcast and if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can see past episodes as well. And in our last hour, which was our previous episode, which was our first one, we talked at length about being daddies and having that identity. And for me, it is, how do I put this to answer your question, Brian? For me, it is a compliment. I know outside of the leather community, whereas, and I did say this last month, being in the leather community, being a daddy is a compliment because you are older, you are sexier, you know more, you know what you're doing, or at least presumably so. So there's that expectation of here's this older man who looks good, who is a presence in the community, who I can learn some things from, whether it's around sex, kink, the community, or just life in general. And I think that's a wonderful antidote to folks who might think, oh, daddy over there, sitting in the corner outside of the leather community, being older is not always embraced. But I know for myself, I like it when someone calls me daddy. Um, whether it's daddy or even playfully daddy. Um, I can never get that right. But all of that to say, even with the challenges that I've had, I would not trade being older because I feel like, first of all, as y'all saw in that picture, the black and white one that we started off with, I've been in the best shape of my life in my 50s than I had been earlier. I think I appreciate things more. Also, it was in my 50s, ironically, during COVID, that I got something that I have wanted for my body for a while, and that was a beard. I've always wanted to know how I look with a beard. Uh, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. And I got it, and I was like, damn, no. I was like the Beyonce song goes, I was feeling myself. I still do. Um, there's also a sexual side benefit, excuse me, of having a beard, which Damon and many other people remind me of on a constant basis. So yes, to being older with the beard. But yeah, and I think for me the biggest compliment was I was visiting my dad about a month or two ago, about 2 months ago, and he looked at me and he said, "Junior," because yes, I'm named after my dad. Junior, how are you so comfortable in your skin? And hearing that from my literal daddy, another, if straight men could be daddies in their own rights, here's one daddy telling me, you know, he admires and I think maybe even envies that level of comfort, that even when things challenge me, that I'm so comfortable in my skin that I can even talk about the challenges. But for the most part, be celebratory in who I am. And that's still a compliment that that I hold on to.
Well, I like the whole the leather title competition thing is like this celebration of primarily traditionally it was gay cis male bodies. I mean, and then it's expanded, quite a bit since they started, the early competitions to include other bodies and other identities. But it's there is a lot of question about why do that? That overt kind of celebration of that body, of that sexuality, of that, whatever. They say the same thing about pride parades. And it's that acknowledgement that it wasn't that long ago that society's biggest message was that we should be ashamed of ourselves. That when we saw media
Right.
representations of ourselves, when we saw ourselves in movies or TV shows, we were usually dead by the end of the movie because there was something wrong with us and we needed to be out of the picture. So it's us taking our place in the center of the picture. It's us framing ourselves as people of value and people who should be as celebrated as any other human being should. But there is a very narrow group of human beings that have been celebrated throughout history, and we're just saying it's time you saw us too. And if you're not going to see us, at least we're going to see each other and inspire each other to be the best possible whatever we are. And part of that is our physicality. It is that a lot of us as gay men felt we were denied that kind of masculinity when we were younger. We weren't on the sports teams. We weren't the big man on campus. But we can be that now. We can be that at whatever age. We can finally embrace that kind of my body is just as valuable in the spaces as anybody else's is. And in fact, I would. This is just me, based on
Mm-hmm.
what I see visually. But I think gay men as a whole gay men are a lot better at maintaining that body, whatever that body is, later in life than I have seen heterosexual men do. And I think a lot of it is that kind of uh, we're later to embrace that as an option, and we hold on to it as long as we can because we recognize the value of it, and I also recognize how much more work it takes after you turn a certain age to look the way we want to look. Because I was one of those when I was a teenager through my 20s, probably in my early 30s. It was hard for me to put on weight. I was naturally one of those people who was just lean. My body fat was very low. And then a year came where that was no longer the case, and then I had to start thinking about it. Uh, but I value now the work that goes into having that kind of body that I idealize because it doesn't come easily. It takes a lot of work, and I respect that. And that's part of my attraction to that is knowing the people who are doing that care enough about themselves that they're willing to put in that work.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, what you said. No, I mean, seriously. I mean, it's real. And it's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking, who would I like to, I guess, give a shout out to? Um, last broadcast, we gave a shout out to Ralph Bruno, um, as daddies, and that's a daddy if there ever was one. I'm thinking about our conversation around, like older, more mature porn actors, professional and amateur. So I think about Aaron Trainer, Dallas Steele, some of the more amateur ones like Love and Light TV and Body by Mont, who are on Twitter. Those are among some of my favorites, and I'm just like, yeah, Officer Muscles. I don't know his other name, and that's okay because I just love looking at him. And I realized, that's important to me. Definitely sexually having that visual representation, but I'm also thinking about the older gays. They're a group of, and I think that's the name of the five older men based. I think they're based in Palm Springs.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah.
TikTok virtual stars, and I do mean stars because they're different. Well, four white guys and one black man. Um, Let me see, different sizes, different shapes, even as older men who have a blast making these
Mhm.
videos. And I'm just like, that's what I'm talking about.
And you can check them out on World of Wonder.
Say
You
that
can check
again.
them out on World of Wonder.
Exactly. And it's funny because, and again, it may have little or nothing to do with body per se. But my thing was this. I mean, one of the things I looked at were their body types, and I'm like, here are these guys with different body types, you know, that are living their best life, regardless. Who are having fun, who have celebrity, and who are sharing their wealth of happiness and comedy and fun with everyone. And I'm like, you know what? When I grow up, that's what I want to be like. Either I'm making someone laugh or I'm turning someone on.
Well, when I was younger, I was hungry for more gay images. Now I'm hungry for more mature gay images, and hopefully,
Mhm.
content creators will keep up with that. And I wish I had the kind of confidence to be able to put myself out there like that. I don't, and maybe that's part of it. When you get older, the moving into having spotlighting your body in that way becomes a little more difficult because you're less impetuous, and it has to be more speaking to something about who you truly are, which is why I appreciate older porn stars who are still doing it because they love it. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it necessarily. Some of them are doing it to pay the bills, but a lot of them are doing it because that's just what they've always wanted to do and finally get to have that identity. And I know we're running out of time. I do want to highlight in the speaking about all this stuff about body that there is it's still important that no matter what work you want to do to make your body look a certain way, as you mentioned before, as we get older, we need to be more concerned about our health. So there's that balance of knowing what's a healthy body for you as opposed to what's an attractive body for you, and working with your medical provider to make sure that you're not pushing yourself too hard, or that you're not neglecting something that needs some attention. It's not just about how it looks, it's how it feels, and how it's running. And you need a trained professional like a doctor to sit down and help you along that journey.
And so, with that, we want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. Hopefully, you got something out of this discussion on body, yada, yada. And again, join us the third Saturday, excuse me, the third Sunday of every month when we'll be broadcasting. And until then, I am Daddy Rod.
And I am Daddy Rob.
And always remember,
Listen to
listen
Daddy.
to Daddy.